Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Best You interview series. It's Gary here again. Thank you very much for joining me. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Urmi Hossain to discuss the work that she is currently engaged in surrounding primarily women in leadership. Urmi is Bengali by blood and Italian by birth. That sounds quite unusual. I don't know that that's a common thing. I don't know much about that, but it does seem quite unique and works in the financial services industry here in Canada. She's a self-published author of the book Discovering Your Identity, A Rebirth from Interracial Struggle, a speaker, a blogger, a polyglot, and I know what that is now because I Googled that last night in preparation for the conversation today, and is a mentor as well, and is also the holder of the CFA and CAIA Charter. She advocates women's empowerment and is very, very passionate about teaching and mentoring other girls and women. And she's also part of an organisation called Women in Leadership for the Victoria chapter in Canada here, and performs the role of the social media lead, where she spreads the message of gender equality and more women in leadership positions. She enjoys being a promoter of self-investment and personal development, and in her free time, she enjoys reading and practicing Muay Thai as well. So, a very interesting bio there. Urmi, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on here today. Thanks very much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Gary.
It's my pleasure. I'd like to start by asking where your passion came from about what it is you're spending your time on. And specifically, I'm talking about the women in leadership part. I know that you do have a strong passion on the financial services side of your life, but in terms of the women in leadership, where did the passion come from?
I think it stems from my own personal experiences, because as you mentioned at the beginning in the introduction, I am Bengali by blood and Italian by birth. And I have seen a lot of double standards in the South Asian community. And like I would see things like, oh, women are not supposed to be do this. Women are basically brought up with this notion, with these limiting notions about how much we can do in life and how much we can achieve. And anything we want to do, we will always want to have like a male partner next to us. And because of how I have seen things around me, because how have seen it also on TV, on social media, this is how I came to decide that I want to be part of something bigger, something where I could make a change. And that's how I joined organizations such as Women Leadership, where basically we promote this message of women's empowerment, gender equality, more women in leadership positions, because we do live in a society that is very much gender biased, and we live in a society which is very much based on a lot of double standards. And unfortunately, I don't know like where this is coming from, but I actually read a book recently about how the society is made by default for men, and little things that we face as women, a lot of men do not realize it. And so because of that, I've been wanting to change basically this whole scenario. I want to make an impact. And that's how I came to join Women in Leadership. It's not the only organization that I am part of. There are other organizations that I collaborated with, where I did like little projects like writing blog articles, doing like YouTube interviews, where I do raise awareness of women's empowerment.
Wonderful. Was there a specific challenge that you've personally faced in your life or career that was the final catalyst or the main catalyst for you to say it's time for me to do something about this?
I would say it's a collection of different episodes in life, because I do work in an industry which is very much male dominated. And like one thing that brought a lot of my attention is the fact that I would go for job interviews, and every time I would do a research on a company, the first thing that I would see is basically who's in the management team. And a lot of the time it was very much it was very much represented by men. Maybe there were 10 people in the management team, and there were two women, maybe eight men, and there was no woman there was not that many women, and there was not women of color. So for me, that was basically something that triggered the action that I have taken. And of course, like all these things that happened when I was growing up, and maybe when I was young, I did not realize any of these things because I felt it was normal. But the more I see this, the more I work in the industry as well, the more I hear it on the news, I do realize that this is an actually bigger problem. Like even in Bangladesh, for instance, one of the biggest issue is child marriages. And so what happened is young girls who are in were 12 or 14, they get married. Like the parents send them away for marriages because they are not seen as an investment. They're seen as a financial burden. And unfortunately, it just sucks because you're like, okay, but why people are so unfair towards women, like why aren't women given the necessary tools, resources, education, mentorship? And so after seeing all of these things, I feel like this is what basically these are some of the challenges that I didn't all fit completely on my body, but I did see them. So I did feel like I had to take an action.
Yeah, I was reading parts of your blog in preparation for today's conversation, and I could feel a lot of emotion coming through in terms of your upbringing. You mentioned there growing up, and in terms of being Bengali, growing up in Italy, and there was a pressure to try and conform to, in
Mhm.
your words, a number of boxes, and eventually you ended up this beautiful piece by saying, I'll make my own box, and I will
Yeah.
live in my own life. Like, what did that feel like as you're growing up? Because as I said, lots of emotion around it, almost as if you can't please anyone in terms of the way that you're trying to grow and live your life.
Yeah, it's very difficult to make everyone happy and it's very difficult to meet everyone's expectation. I think I grew up thinking that my job is to please people and just to do everything that I was being told to. But no matter how much you do, it's never enough. That's the reality. Like you can reach new levels, but once you reach those levels, it's never enough. Like people just want more from you. And one of the things that I think the society is bad at is that we all try to conform to something. We all want to feel accepted. We all want to feel validated. We all want to feel like we belong to something, which is not wrong. But at the same time, I also feel like, are you living your truest self? Like, are you being honest to yourself? And my biggest struggle was really like being able to fit in somewhere. Like, I felt like, for instance, when it came from my cultural identity. Like I never felt like I was Italian enough. I never felt like I was Bengali enough. And no matter what I was trying to fit, I was never a good fit. And so that's when I told myself, I don't need to fit anywhere. I just have to, create my own box, have create my own table with my seat. Like I don't need to, like I don't have to make anyone happy. And I think that's the beauty of being unique and original. Like you create your own thing, and it's a fusion of two things. So that's how I approached it. And I do like this sort of fusion and transformation because I do feel like we as a society, we perform a role to fit in. That's how I see it. But I didn't want to perform a role. I just wanted to be myself, my authentic self. And so that's how I came with this concept, which is not new, which is like the concept of creating your own box.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I get that. Just the way that it was written, it was, as I say, very eloquent. I will put contact details for you in the blurb for this pod, and people can reach out and read what I read. And I thought it was just so eloquent, the way that it was put. There was no malice, there was no negative energy within the words.
Mhm.
I feel like it was all very positive. In terms of influence as you were growing up, into adulthood and making the changes in your life that you made, who would you say would have been the most influential person in your life, and what impact has that person or persons had on you?
So that's a good question because like when you ask me this question, I can only think of one person and I'm thinking of a celebrity. I'm thinking of a celebrity and I'm thinking of Meghan Markle. I do very much like the work that she does. I've seen her in like at the United Nations giving a speech about women's empowerment and gender equality. I could resonate a lot with what she was saying. I see a lot of the humanitarian work that she does to give back to the community. And I would say that she has been really my biggest inspiration. Like every time I would see her work, I would tell myself, this is what I want to do. And a lot of the things that I do, it's because of her, So I admire the work that she does, honestly, because I think in life it's not always about, money. It's not always about getting a monetary value out of it. I think it's really about genuinely giving back to the community, like being spontaneous in your actions and really wanting to help and make the world a better place. So she's the very first person that I think of, but there are also like other celebrities. Usually it's talking about female celebrities that I really look up to, because I can see how all these women are trying to make an impact, like, and I can name you so many persons. Like there is oh my gosh, I forgot her name, but she played in Harry Potter. I forgot her name now. Emma Watson. Emma
Emma
Watson.
Watson, yes, yes.
Emma Watson. She's a big like women's empowerment celebrity. Like she really supports this whole thing about women's empowerment. There are so many, honestly. Like I think every woman in every celebrity that I have seen is doing something to empower women. So I feel very much inspired and encouraged when I see the work that they do. Because yes, they're a celebrity. I'm not a celebrity, but I think the work that I'm doing is still good enough. So
Of course it is. Absolutely it is.
yeah,
And it's fascinating you mentioned Meghan Markle. There's certain factions. Obviously, I'm from Scotland, and the UK press in general terms has not been kind to Meghan
right.
Markle and Prince Harry for the way that they've conducted their lives. And I'll maybe emphasize it's their lives. They can do what they like to do. And interestingly, just a pure aside, my son, who's 15, has started watching Suits on
Uh-huh.
Netflix. And he said, Meghan Markle is in Suits. And I says, yeah, I know. And he says, like I didn't know that princesses were allowed to act. And I says, well, she wasn't a princess when she was in the show. And he says, I think she was. And we said, wait, this is literally just a couple of days ago where we had this conversation. But yeah, looking at the Netflix documentary, there is a lot more to her than meets the
Yes.
eye, and certainly a lot more than is reported in the general
Hmm.
press. So fabulous, and of course looking at Emma Watson, there are so many fabulous examples of
Yes.
women in leadership, and personally, in my career, which spans 30 plus years, the best, by a country mile, the best leaders I've had have been female, including back to
Yeah.
Scotland times as well. And it wasn't something I thought about. It was just, this is my leader. This is the person who can support me. This is who
Hmm.
I need to perform for, who I would like
Yeah.
to impress to a
Yeah.
certain. And I personally never had a gender bias, and possibly that's because I grew up with four very strong-willed sisters and a very strong-willed mum, and we were just equal. Actually, we weren't equal. I was like the lowest common denominator, and that, but I've been so blessed to have enjoyed, working for some incredible, up to including just now, some incredible leaders. And so if you're listening, you know who you are. What would you say would be the main learning that you've gained from the work that you've done specifically in the women in leadership space that you'd like people to know?
You know what? I like a lot of the things that I have done is really like a lot of mentoring, and I have met a lot of young females. And when I say young females, I'm talking about like women in their 20s, 20, between 20 to 25. And I am in my 30s. So for me to meet these women, it was beautiful because one of the things I learned is that they do have a lot of drive. Like they just wanna get things done. They're very ambitious. They are go-getters. Like I've seen these women and I can see how they're so ambitious. And me seeing that in other women is also something that fuels me at the same time. Like I feel like I'm also getting that energy. And it's beautiful because it's like you get influenced very easily when you see that kind of passion that is coming from young women who they just want to get things done. They want to achieve things. And so sometimes it's like if you don't have those kind of connection, you don't see that. So I feel like it makes it a little bit demotivated. You wonder if it's normal that you wanna get things done, but then you don't see enough of these people doing the same thing. But then when you meet the right people, you actually realize that there are a lot of women out there very ambitious. Like they just want to achieve things. They want to get to their goals. They dream big. They have objectives. So that has been for me like also like a lesson. There's something that I have learned along the way through the years of this like of this meeting. So for me, that was one learning, I would say.
Definitely. And it's great to feel inspired by
Yeah,
whomever you're interacting with. My
yeah,
love, she's part of an organization. It's a nationwide organization, certainly in Canada. I don't know if it's in America, called Women in Communication and Technology.
okay,
And it's specific, fairly similar to the financial services industry. Communications and technology is predominantly male dominated, and they are going about trying to change that and trying to expose opportunities for females in a variety of positions, not just leadership. And I've gone to a few events. I was a panel guest at one of the events before, and you're exactly right, Urmi. It's inspiring to see,
yeah,
firstly, to see the community,
yeah,
and a lot of people getting together for the same common goal, which
yeah,
is to raise awareness and to increase opportunity. But then when
yeah,
you take it down to an individual level and hear and see and feel people's stories at the same
yeah,
time, it's incredible to see that. And like everything, there's a whole bunch of communities out there that we don't even know of that are doing great work, and you might never hear of them. But when
yeah,
you actually get a chance to see how organized they are, how driven they are, how meaningful they are
yeah,
attempting to be going forward, and literally the great work that they're doing, you can't help but be energized by that,
yes,
and there's such a diverse demographic
yeah.
within the community as well. So it sounds like you have the same in your community. If you were to target like one major thing that you would like, I know you want to make meaningful change for women in leaderships, women in leadership, excuse me. But what would be one major thing that you'd love to change in your industry today for the better?
There are many things actually that I would like to change, but like within the whole concept of women's empowerment, like one thing that I am trying to change is um basically like how women are seen in the industry, like especially when I talk about like the finance industry, there are so many things that women have like women have a lot of needs and wants, and I'm trying to like bring that kind of awareness through the conversation with my managers indirectly, like I'm not saying it directly, but when it comes to having more work-life balance, for instance, like I do bring that type of awareness through conversations when I say about when I say about when I say about having more flexibility, for instance, like women need a bit more flexibility. They need to leave early if they have to go to doctor's appointment. Like it's a little things in the workplace that I think do make a huge change. And also like as women we want to be more like we want to participate more to meetings or circles where in the workplace where they have this kind of like roundtable discussions where you can talk about things that bothers you or things that you want to make a change. I'm trying to change that like through my small actions. Like I cannot make a huge impact, but I think starting from one place, starting from a place where you feel secure, where you feel like you can speak up, I think it's already a good starting point. So now I'm trying to change that, because even when I went to a lot of job interviews in the past, one thing that was always, I would say, stopping me from applying is the fact that I would not see a lot of representation and I would not see a lot of women in management positions. But I also told myself that if I'm not applying, then I'm like continuing this whole issue, like I'm not changing anything. It's still staying the way it is. So I try to make a change by me being the first one to see if it's worth it to apply, to see if I can break this bias. So it's basically that's how I'm trying to tackling this particular issue.
Yeah, and it's great to have that foresight, to not let any false ceiling be a barrier to you going forward. I was chatting with a coaching client recently who was in the job hunting space, and we were talking about, I had read a study, and forgive me, I won't get the facts completely right here, but if a female is reading a job description or a role description for a job and they don't match almost 100% of the criteria, the chances are they wouldn't apply because there's no point. I'm not ready for that position. I'm not good enough, whatever story they would tell themselves. Whereas if it's a male, and I know this literally from my own personal experience, I would look and I would say, that's a wish list. That's the ideal candidate. That person might not even exist. I'm going to give that a go. And what's the worst that's going to happen? I'm going to learn something, or nothing will happen. Either or is okay by me. So to see you being purposeful in that area, and hopefully that's a bit of an inspiration to whomever listens to this, to say, again, what's the worst that's going to happen? You're going to get some exposure, you're going to get some experience, and you just never know.
Yeah, and if I can further add to that, because I've read this in a book as well, is it's also the way companies promote their job description, which is wrong to begin with. Because a lot of the times, if you see a job description or if you see the company's website, and if you see like the job description has a picture, for instance, or the company has a picture, and you usually see like it's like man working in the office, there is a high probability that a woman will not apply. Like this is an actual fact, like they have done a research. But on the other hand, if the company who is promoting a particular job, it has like men and women or has like more women, chances are that the women will actually apply for that particular job. And it was interesting. It was very interesting because I felt exactly the same way when I was applying because I was like, okay, like I see this job description. Let's say there is a picture attached, like they're trying to promote the company who works there and stuff like that. But it does make a difference on who you put in that picture, like are you putting women of color? Are you putting women, with a hijab? Are you, like it makes a huge difference what you're trying to promote. So this whole thing about corporate social responsibility is still very important for a company when they're trying to retain or hire people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, definitely. And it's one of these things, I wonder how conscious or unconscious it is from an organizational perspective. Hopefully, in terms of a positive spin on it, it would be
yeah,
unconscious, and there's just a level of ignorance there.
yeah,
But if it becomes conscious, where whomever has the authority to be able to create these images that are projecting out to the world,
yeah,
and they decide, less female or less female of color, or whatever the particular bias would
yeah,
be, that's a scary thought
yeah,
in today's age.
yeah, 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 yeah. It's yeah, I agree with you. Yes.
Yeah, I didn't have a lot of exposure to that, and it's not even exactly the same topic. But when I was doing some health and safety work back in the day, we would be taking photographs of construction sites, and we would then say, "Yeah, we just wanted to take a picture of that scaffolding or that person doing that thing," and
Mm-hmm.
then we would have to run the photographs through the health and safety department. And the health and safety department would go through it with a fine-tooth comb, and they would say that person's hard hat is not correct, that person isn't wearing the proper personal protective equipment. You can't have that in the background.
Yeah.
That's a potential hazard there. And when you were saying earlier, just in terms of the imagery, it's almost the same thing where you need that absolute level of diligence from a corporate social governance perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Say, is this promoting exactly who we are, who we want to be, where we're going in the future? And I'm not sure how many organizations are truly doing
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and like you said, I think it's an unconscious bias. Like I don't think a lot of organizations are aware of that. But again, I do think that if you do have a woman working for that organization, she can bring her perspective to it and she can share her ideas. her creativity to see how we can make it better, for instance, and how we can promote it better. It's true because we, like, men will think from their own perspective, we will think with from our own perspective. But I think if we can bring the two of them together, you can come with something that represents both parties. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. And then consciously speak to everyone.
yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. Excellent. What's one piece of advice that you would like to share with the listeners today?
So this one is more from the career perspective, and I always share it to people that I meet, is to always be your best advocate. Because I think when it comes to promoting yourself, you're the best person who can do it. Like, you know yourself better than anyone else. You know the work that you have done. You know your talent. You know your skills. And if there are things that you want to achieve, the things that you want to work on, the thing projects that you want to complete, it's your job to basically sell yourself, to always prove that, I'm the best person. And it's basically what you would do for a friend. Like, I'm thinking, like, what would I say to my friend if I want her to achieve things? I would tell her, go forward and talk about it. So treat yourself like you're your best friend, so that you can basically, promote yourself, sell yourself, and just grow from there.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Unfortunately, I think any gender we are our own worst critics. Of course, I know that's a little bit of a
Yes,
cliche,
yes,
but some of the things that we say to ourselves, we would never, ever say to anyone else. But for some
yeah,
reason, we think it's
yeah.
okay to say it to ourselves. And it's 100% not okay, of course, to say any of that. So being your own biggest advocate, how would you say? What would be the first step for someone who struggles in that area to get to a point where you are appreciating who you are, what you can do, what you can bring, what you can offer? Step number one.
So I would say the step number one would be to make a list of the things that you have accomplished. I think that's fundamental. Like, you can write down what you have done to keep a track, actually, sort of like a diary, like keep track of it.
Yeah.
And then I would say that, like, find the right moment to talk about it with someone. Like, no, by someone I mean, like, let's say you want to do something at work and you want to, let's say, do a project, you want to get a promotion or you want to get a salary increase. You want to find the right moment to discuss about it. And I do think that it's not comfortable. Like, if there, like, let's say you want to ask for a raise or if you want to ask for a promotion, it's really not comfortable. But what is it that can happen? What's the worst thing that can happen? You're not going to get it, but at least you made an effort. And I would say that when you are doing that, you are getting comfortable with the uncomfortable, and it makes you much more confident for next time. Like, you see that it's scary, but you know that it wasn't so bad. And when there will be a next time, you know how to tackle it. And I think this kind of conversation where, you make a list or you keep track of what you have accomplished, and when you're ready, you're able to talk about this. I would say that it's also what helps you to, like I said, to be much more comfortable. And you also can take feedback on how to be better for next time. Like, maybe this time is not working, but you know how, you can be better next time. So you get this constructive feedback, which are always healthy to take, because that's how we learn and grow. So I would say these are my steps, that this is how I would do it.
So yeah, I love the sentiment of being comfortable, being uncomfortable.
Yeah,
And it's a thing that it fills a lot of people with dread. People
yeah,
really kind of pre-regret something that hasn't
yeah,
even happened yet. And a thing, a bit of advice I give to people now and again when I'm chatting to them is if you're asking for an opportunity, say, for example, for some mentorship, for the opportunity to
yeah.
shadow someone or the opportunity just to pick someone's brain, it can be daunting, of course, to go and approach that person, especially if they're in a position of power. However, it's very, very flattering for the other person.
Yeah. And also, like, finding someone to talk about it before, like through mentorship, or if you have a mentor, whether it's at work or not at work, I think it's also another step to take before you take on the last step of having a conversation. Like, you have the list, and then you're like, okay, I want to see if I can have a feedback from someone before I actually speak to my manager before, I think it's a good step. I think the other person who might have much more experience can provide you with their own guidance and advice, and so you know how to deal with this when the actual day comes. Yeah,
Definitely. Yeah.
yeah,
I don't think you can practice too much at
no,
these sorts of things. And as you say, everything is a learning, to get some constructive
yeah,
feedback, to think that didn't work with that person, but it could work with another person. This style just doesn't feel natural to me. And
yeah.
like everything, with more practice, you gain more skills and more robustness in how you're going about things.
Mhm.
Urmi, this has been a fantastic conversation. I've thoroughly enjoyed getting to listen to you, getting to learn from you today. Before we wrap up today, can you let me know where the listeners can find you, please?
Yes. They can find me on LinkedIn. It's called Urmi Hossain, my LinkedIn profile. I have a YouTube page called Urmi Hossain. I have my blog, which is called myways.ca. If people want to purchase my book, it's available on Amazon and it's called The Discovering Your Identity, A Rebirth from Interracial Struggle. And I also have an Instagram account called Urmanio.
Fantastic. And I'll put all of those links in the blurb for today's interview as well. Urmi, I can't thank you enough for taking the time. It's been a tremendous experience, and I hope you got something from it too.
Thank you.